Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I have Tiffany Yager here, who is a dear friend of mine, also featured in our brand new book, Burn, the 5-Step Strategy to Inner and Outer Strength. And you get, listen, this woman is incredible. You guys are in for a treat. You are in for a wild ride, an incredible story of bravery, of confidence, of overcoming the things that stand in front of us. And like I said, one of the most amazing accounts of how having a positive mindset can save your life, literally save your life. She was given a 15% chance of survival after being diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And I know them personally, these people, Tiffany and Ray Yager, and I'll tell you what, as soon as I heard about this, I'm like, oh, they got this. They got this, because their mental strength was being built, their entire lives. And so they obviously kept a positive mindset and was determined to fight for her family and their family. And Tiffany's story is one that's showcased in the new book, like I said, along with 13 others. I can't wait for you to dig into this today, Tiff, because it is just so moving and it's so powerful. And I think where we'll start for people so that they can really get to know you as good as they can here on the podcast, I'd like for you to start just talking about your story and, bring us up to the burn here in Battle Creek. By the way, everyone, we're sitting here at Battle Creek, Michigan, which is my hometown, Morgan's hometown. And Tiff has been a member here for a while. So take us up to that, Tiff, and we'll get into your story today. And welcome to the podcast. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. So I've been a member here of Burn Bootcamp Battle Creek since 2019. My husband was actually contacted and hired to be a head trainer here. This is before the location was even open. So I've been here from build out of this building to the pop-up campus and parking lots to the day that they actually opened in 2019.
You've seen
July
it all.
of 2019.
Yeah, you've seen it all.
Yeah.
Your parking lot OG is what we call them across Bird Nation.
Those were fun.
Yeah. And just a little bit about how you and Ray met. Walk me, back through your history, where you grew up, and then we'll move forward into that moment that you heard, hey, you have cancer.
So Ray and I actually met at the gym. Here in Battle Creek. It was a different gym. And that was a long time ago. I think we met maybe 15 years ago. So started in the gym and we're still at the gym.
So everything's going super well. You guys growing your family, growing your lives, growing your careers, growing your health, growing your fitness. You're a huge part of Burn Bootcamp Battle Creek, and you hear 3 words that kind of bring you to a halt. I have cancer. So what those words, explain to me where you were at, what your mindset was, and was that a surprise when you heard that? Where did it come from? Let us intimately understand where you were that day.
So it was not a surprise. I had a lot of symptoms for several months leading up to that. And I was very, very fatigued for probably a good 4 months. And it was more than just, I'm a tired mom of 3 little kids, a tired, busy working mom. It was just very extreme fatigue. And some days I could shower and just do the bare minimum for my kids. I didn't have enough energy to do much more than that. I was bruising very easily. My gums were inflamed and red. I was having night sweats every single night, but I was making excuses. I said, well, maybe I'm just going through menopause early. And with the fatigue, I had COVID a few times that year. And I thought, well, maybe I just have like long hauler symptoms of COVID. I was also having like random fevers, like once a week I would have a fever. But again, I would always justify it with some excuse. So when they told me, I was at my local hospital and they said, you have some form of blood cancer, I was almost relieved, as crazy as that sounds. I remember saying, I knew it. I knew something was wrong. Something seriously was wrong. So it was almost oddly like a relief.
Mm-hmm. And that day you went here to the local hospital, and, I saw you at Summit, and this was, can you recall when that was, when we saw you at Summit? Because you weren't feeling well at Summit either.
Yes. Maybe that was still just a few months before.
It was a few months before. I think you were not feeling well with COVID, and you went upstairs, and you weren't looking that great. And I was concerned at that time as well. Yeah.
So I had leukemia at that point. I just didn't know it. And with the type of leukemia I had, you can survive 6 months without treatment. That's the longest that you could go. So I was slowly dying at that point.
Yeah. And so then you were given a 15% chance. That's the average survival rate of acute myeloid leukemia. Can you explain to us what that is as opposed to maybe other cancers, and why the survival rates are so low?
So acute myeloid leukemia, which is also referred to as AML leukemia, it's cancer of the blood and bone marrow. There's several different forms of leukemia, and AML is the least favorable of them. Sometimes when you have AML leukemia, you can also have mutations, and those mutations, they range from more favorable to mildly favorable to less favorable. I had a mutation called FLT3-ITD, and that is a less favorable mutation. So if a person with AML leukemia with that mutation, if they can survive the chemo, because it's a very toxic chemo, if they can survive it and make it through transplant, they're then given between 10 and 15% chance of surviving the first 5 years. And that's where I'm at right now.
And so you heard this, you weren't surprised, almost a sense of relief, like now I know what's going on. And most people wouldn't think that way. I think that's reflective of your mental toughness and your resilience and your emotional strength. And it's almost like you've been preparing in your life in a weird way for any adversity.
Sure.
And it just happened to be a form of adversity that is dangerous and scary. And, but your positive mindset, and speaking with you when I met you at your house, about, I don't know how long ago it was now, but during the process, I asked you the same question, and without hesitancy, you were right on it with your positive mindset. You didn't even hesitate, strong in your personal mental strength, but also in your faith. And so talk to me about your mindset as you hear this and your reaction to it. And the couple days after that, as you and Ray sit back and you guys talk about what the game plan is here.
So like you had said, I went to my local hospital first, and that's where they did blood work in the emergency room. And they came back fairly quickly and said, you have some sort of blood cancer. We don't know what type of blood cancer it is, but we're not equipped to treat that here. We need to send you to Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan, by ambulance right now. And we want to prepare you that when it's a blood cancer, you're gone for, a month, 2 months, 3 months, you're gone for a while. And I said, okay, I need to go home and I need to hug my children. I have 3 little girls. I want to go home and hug them and tell them I'm going to be gone for a while, and that I'm going to be okay, not to worry. And they said, we can't let you do that. Your blood is so thick. There's so much immature white blood cells, which is what happens with leukemia. Your blood is so thick that you have less than 24 hours left to live. It's going to clog in your heart and you're not going to make it. You need to go right now by ambulance. And I said, that's not what I wanted to do. But I said, okay, we can do that. So I left by ambulance and Ray followed behind in his truck. And when we got to the emergency room, when they took me out of the ambulance, Ray was waiting right there. And they said, sorry, you can't come in with her. It was COVID restriction times still at the hospital. And so I was told you have some form of blood cancer. You have less than 24 hours left to live. And then I could have nobody with me. So I sat in the ICU in Ann Arbor for the first week completely alone. They were filtering my blood through a machine. It's called leukapheresis, and it's similar to when people have like their blood filtered for other illnesses. It's similar to that, but it's a little bit different. They basically have to thin your blood out so that it's not going to clog your heart, and I would be able to go in for chemo after that. But my mindset was, okay, this is just a step that we have to get through. I'm going to get through this because I never got to hug my kids goodbye. I have to get back and I have to hug my kids. So that's where my mind was.
Oh, that's powerful. Wow. Yeah, I remember when we all heard the news, it was incredibly devastating, probably more devastating for the people around you than even it was, not necessarily putting this on you that it was for you, but definitely devastating for those around you. And I just remember Ray had reaching out to every person he possibly could that he trusted, just to say, hey, throw prayers in the air. Yeah. We're here. We're getting through this. He was like immediately putting that energy into the universe that like, we're going to, like, we need you guys. We got this, but if you help us out here and put prayers into the world, we're going to be stronger for that. And so now you're in the hospital, University of Michigan, alone for a week. It ends up being not just a week that you're there. It was how long?
It was a month the first time.
A month the first time. So take me through the journey, the battle, right? Yeah. Because that was the first time. How often did you come home? When did you go back? What surgeries did you go through? What was the process like? This was one of the most intense things that any of us have ever seen. You had mentioned you had 7 facial surgeries, a litany of other treatments, and through the whole time, every time I saw you guys, I was just like, "How you doing? Great, just beating the next step, Yes. And so I really want to talk about the journey here and talk about the ups and downs throughout this, and keep bringing it back to that positive mindset. Because when we talk about your story in the book, you're in chapter 7, and it's all about mental strength. It's all about you grabbing this thing and saying, you're not going to beat me. I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, but one time when you came to our location to visit, we were talking and you said so much of our physical strength is tied to our mental strength. And I took that with me. It is so very true. So the whole time I just focused on being strong to get home to my kids. That was my big thing. I just wanted to get home to my kids. It wasn't fair to them that mom was suddenly gone. It was the most important thing to me. And through the process, I did have a lot of surgeries, like you talked about. I've had a lot of facial surgeries related to the second cancer that I had at the same time. And I've also had 8 bone marrow biopsies, and those are not fun. I've also had 8 spinal taps where they took out my spinal fluid and replaced it with chemo. And those sometimes come with their own complications, like you get spinal headaches, and very, very painful. But with everything, I looked at everything almost as like I'm on this path, and each thing was like a stepping stone. This is the step I'm at right now. I'm going to get through it because I can see that next step and I got to get to that next step. And at the end of that path is my family. It's my little girls and me getting back home to them. So it was a mental toughness and just a strength that I think really derived from my family.
And you mentioned the second cancer.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about that.
So pre-leukemia diagnosis, I had a basal cell carcinoma on my nose. And that is a very common skin cancer, very slow growing skin cancer. I don't want to completely dismiss it because they are still serious, but it's probably one of the least serious skin cancers. So at the time, they, because it's not something to really worry about, they scheduled a Mohs procedure, which is where they just cut off the skin cancer and stitch it closed. They had scheduled it out. It was a few months out. Well, during that time, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and I went right in for chemotherapy in Ann Arbor. And when you are under chemo, your immune system is suppressed, especially if it's leukemia. They have to completely destroy your bone marrow, bring your blood counts down to 0.0 something. And when you don't have an immune system, skin cancer will spread like wildfire. Well, I didn't know that. So I went through my first round of chemo, and after that, they said, okay, we need to go ahead and get this skin cancer addressed. And so I went in and went for a regular Mohs procedure, again, in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. And they made their first cut. It did not have clear margins, which is, that can happen. So they cut again, and they cut again. And by the time they were done, in order to have clear margins, I had no nose left. It was just a void in the middle of my face. They sent me right over to plastics, and there was one surgeon left there still who was getting ready to leave for the day. And she said, I can't leave her like this. I can't leave her for someone to come and fix it in the morning. We need to do this right away. I found out later on that the procedure I had, it was called a forehead flap. So this was the largest forehead flap that the surgeon had ever done. And I was also the youngest person she had ever done it on. Usually if someone has a forehead flap, they're older. So that surgery, a forehead flap is where they cut up your forehead and they use the skin from your scalp and part of your forehead and they flap it over your nose. They leave it attached for about a month, and then a month later they unattach it, and this keeps the tissue alive. It was a pretty extensive surgery, and so I looked a little strange. I would look in the mirror and I didn't recognize who I saw because I didn't have any hair from the chemotherapy for the leukemia. And then I had this patchwork kind of nose. I mean, I had over 250 stitches with just that first surgery. So it was a lot, but at the same time, I just felt so grateful that I was alive. I was alive, and I was still there to be with my kids. They needed a mom, and I needed to be with them.
Yeah, that purpose you come back to is that light at the end of the tunnel, and you keep reminding yourself, and that's the root of all the positivity and all the optimism you had during this. And it's something that would take most people completely out. You're so certain. You have this high level of certainty the whole time, which is, it's incredible. And it attests to the power of your mental strength, really, leading the way. If you believe you can, you can.
Yes. I love that.
Okay, so it's really, stem cell transplant. Let's talk. So the chemo is not working as well as you want it to. And the next option is to get a stem cell transplant. Okay, this is when you found out that the skin cancer in your nose is going to require the complete reconstruction surgery. Once that procedure is complete, doctors were then focused on killing the remaining cancer cells to get you into remission. And they used a different form of chemo so you could get a stem cell transplant. This stuff is complicated.
Yeah.
With the new chemo came another hurdle that you had to overcome, when your PICC line got infected, resulting in a staph infection. So like this is just a one after another, hitting you. Oh, by the way, the violent allergic reaction to the antibiotic that they use to try to kill the infection. Like, talk to me about the complexity of this thing and some of the things that I just mentioned.
Yeah. So that first month-long stay in Ann Arbor, towards the end of that stay, they do a bone marrow biopsy, and that biopsy is to tell you, like, are you clean? Are you not clean? We were so hopeful, like almost certain that was going to be it, and then I could go on to transplant. But the bone marrow biopsy showed quite a bit of leukemia still left, not a little, but it was a lot. They had to give me some time off. I was told at that time, like, you're going to have to come back and go through this again. Another month away from my kids. But I had the nose removal and reconstruction during that time. So I got 2 months at home recovering from that. And then I went in for that second round where they used a different form of chemo. I kept getting infections in my PICC lines, and a PICC line is a catheter that's it's in your arm, and it's like threaded through towards your heart, so that they can get the chemo right into your system. I kept getting infections. So I had my first PICC line infected in my right arm, and then so they switched arms, and then that got infected and they switched back again. So in order to treat the infections, they were giving me an IV antibiotic. And every time they would administer it, I would have, they called them rigors, and it's a very violent shaking. So I would just lay in my bed, like just shaking so hard. And I told the doctors, I think I'm allergic to this medication. It was called vancomycin. It's a very common medication that they give people. And they said, well, we give this to everyone. The chances that you're allergic, they just kind of dismissed me. And this went on for days. I was fevering at 103 with this infection for, I think, 5 or 6 days. And finally they said, okay, we're going to try. It's not working. And also I kept saying, I'm allergic. They switched it to a different type of antibiotic, and I no longer had the violent shaking, and I started to get better. Also during that time, my husband would try to come and visit me like 3 days a week. That's all he could do because he had 3 little kids by himself. And Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, it's an hour and a half away. So it's 3 hours round trip, and he would come just while they were at school and daycare. And he came to visit me while I was, fevering and very ill. And I said, my mind is saying I'm going to make it, but I'm afraid sometimes when I fall asleep that my body's going to fail me. And he said, I'm just going to pray for you. I feel like I need to pray for you. And he kind of like laid hands on my shoulders, and he prayed for me out loud for, 20, 30 minutes. And it was really powerful. I mean, at the end of that prayer, he said, I feel like God is telling me to tell you that you need to get up and move. Just get up and move, get up and move. He kept repeating it. And in my mind, I was like, okay, God, like, it was just kind of ironic because I had lost my ability to walk during the second stay, the second induction chemo. I had neurological damage from this type of chemo. And so I could get up, but my walk was very unstable. The nurses wouldn't let me go to the bathroom by myself or shower. I needed help. And so I said, okay, we're going to get up and move then. That's what God wants me to do. So Ray would kind of support me, and we would just move slowly through my room, or I would lay on the bed and he would like bicycle my legs and move my arms. And it became our anthem. Just get up and move, get up and move. And we would say it all the time, get up and move. I was determined. When I left after that stay and we got back to our house, I wasn't going to let that be my story. I wasn't going to fight cancer and fight so hard to live to never walk again. So I told my husband that I was going to get on our treadmill every day and I was going to walk a couple miles. Well, not hardly being able to walk, that took forever, like a half a day sometimes. But I would get on the treadmill and I would hold on just really tightly to the railings, and I would just slowly move my legs until I would get a couple miles in. And I did it every single day. I was tired. I was fatigued, but I did it every single day. And here the doctors are telling me you might never walk again. Well, a little over a week later, I started to get my walk back. I pushed myself. I got up and moved, every single day. And I got my walk back. So a month later, I went back to the University of Michigan for my stem cell transplant, and I walked in completely unassisted, no wheelchair, walked right in. Hey, it's me, the girl you said would probably never walk again. Here I am, ready for transplant.
Present and ready for transplant on my 2 feet.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Get up and move.
Get up and move. Get up and move.
God, it's so powerful, Tiff. Gosh, I'm practically welled up the whole time you're talking. I just remember that like so vividly. Ray and I were texting after that, and I'm sure he had a handful of people that he was just keeping in the loop, and I was grateful to be one of them. And I know I was probably bothering him a little bit too, just worried about you, like what's going on, how's it going? Around the big dates of when you would have, I remember when I was disappointed when he had said, hey, the first, there's still cancer in her bone. And like, I was disappointed. He wasn't. He was like, okay, hey, this is it. Let's go. Next step. Get up and move. Get up and move. Yes. Get up and move. And that's, I've got the chills when you talked about you guys in deep prayer.
Yeah.
And it's just, so powerful. The prayer and Burn Nation at the same time. Was this around the same time that I think Morgan shared it on her story, and I did, and Burn did? Was this around the same time? Like it was almost that first month you were there, I believe. Talk to us about the strength and power of just Burn Nation as a whole during this, as your story really burn viral, and everybody in Burn Nation was praying for you and kind of latching on to the energy that you guys had created in the hospital room that day in deep prayer. And what did that mean to you? And what are some of the best memories from that?
Yeah, so Burn Nation was so supportive. I don't work for Burn. I'm just a member, and my story was shared and people rallied behind me. I thought, well, I'm nobody special, right? But I was treated amazing. So our own location, they did a meal train, and meals were provided for Ray and the kids for months. I mean, Devin, I'm talking like 4 months worth of food. It just kept going and going. So he would be taking care of the kids or running to Ann Arbor. By the time everyone got home at night, it was guaranteed that they would have a hot meal. It meant a lot to me. And there were also other locations across the U.S. that did fundraisers for us. And I've been, like, every time we travel, we try to go to Burn. If we're on vacation, I like to get location shirts. Like, hey, I went to this Burn. These were locations I'd never even been to. They saw my story and they did fundraisers for us. Meg Clements, who's a trainer, I'm not sure exactly which location she's
Bluebell?
at. Bluebell. She did a lot for us. They sent us a very generous donation that their members raised for me. They did a lot of nice things for me. As well, I made friends with this girl named Jenny O. And Jenny is from Philly. She's also a Burn member. And she did a lot of nice things for me too. Her mom had AML leukemia. She's since lost her fight. But she was a pioneer for the drug that I currently take that keeps me alive. Without this drug, I would have a 1.8% chance of survival. Jenny's mom went to the FDA when she was fighting it herself, and she was pushing for this drug to be put into the market because this drug gave her 3 extra years of life. And that drug was approved, and that's the drug that I take. And so we connected that way, and we're still friends. We talk all the time. I've made so many friends. And I feel like they've stayed with me through the journey.
And as you're going through the journey, obviously that, Burn Nation is there to support you, but your family is the core and the purpose. And those hugs that you were after, how did those feel when you got home?
Oh, they were so good. I would wait, a month each time to hug my kids, because when you are going through chemotherapy for AML leukemia, they have to totally wipe out your immune system. So they wouldn't let my children come and see me because they were afraid they would get me sick. So it was so hard. I would just be thinking about just getting home and just wrapping them up in my arms. And I would just hug them until they're like, okay, Mom, that's enough. I missed them so much, but it was what kept me going.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I got obviously a front row seat. I got to come over and hang out with you for a day, a couple hours at your house and break some bread with you guys and just check on you. And, the house had energy that day. I'll never forget it. We shared a hug in your living room, and you were just so positive. And I just felt the prayer that you guys have been praying, because I know that was just happening every night and day. You could feel it. There was such a pure energy in the house that day. And, I came a little bit nervous to see you, because the last time I had seen you, like you said, like you looked differently, and you had, you didn't necessarily, I guess it was that summit, and I didn't think anything of it then. I was like, oh, Tiff is going to go upstairs and, she's not feeling well. Like kind of happens all the time. People, go somewhere and they get like sick or something, and they go upstairs and they have to miss a day. But then, just to see you that day was really special. And I know Morgan and myself were so proud of Battle Creek, Burn Nation, the way they stepped up and the way that they supported you. And just to have somebody who we call a friend who is going through something so challenging, it makes you strong. It made me stronger. For sure. Watching you, being there to support you is only the least I could do, but watching you gave inspiration to so many people.
Thank you.
So many people. I was like, I can't wait for this podcast because, if you guys are like me right now, you're having to sniffle every 2 seconds. But it's because I'm happy and proud and I knew you're going to kick cancer's ass one way or another. Right. Yeah. And so talk to us a little bit about how just like, putting a button on the mental health and mental positivity, how this helped you with your physical activity since then, since you've decided to get up in the hospital room that day and to keep moving. Then you got on the treadmill and you started walking at a snail's pace for a couple miles and it just you kept going, and eventually you got back into the gym. So talk to me about what it's been like to, go through the 7 facial surgeries, go through all these treatments, and be in a place, right now where you are kicking its ass. Yeah.
So I kind of want to go back to transplant. So I told you I walked in for transplant, right? I had made up my mind. I told my husband, I knew this chemo was even going to be a harder chemo because they have to basically take you to the brink of death to build you back up. And so I told my husband, I'm not going to lose my walk again. I got it back. Here I am. So when I went in for transplant, I knew that was going to be like a 6-7 week stay. And when I got into my room, I said, hey, I know there's physical therapists here. Do you think I could get my hands on a spinning bike? They wouldn't let me leave my room. And so they did. They found me a spinning bike and they brought it to my room. And I said, I'm getting on this spinning bike 45 minutes a day, every day. And I did every single day. I ended up leaving a week early because I was just recovering so well. The doctors told me I was the very first patient they ever had exercise her way through transplant. But when I left the hospital, they brought a wheelchair to my room because everybody lives in a wheelchair. I didn't. I put my bags, my coffee maker, all the stuff that I had brought to my room. That's what I pushed out in my wheelchair. I walked out on my own, totally unassisted.
I love that.
So when I was in there, I would meet with a chaplain like every other day. I enjoyed his company. He would pray for me. Super nice guy. And he challenged me to make a bucket list. And at first I was offended. Oh, I'm not going to die. Why would I make a bucket list? And he said, this isn't a bucket list of you're going to die, so you need to do these things. This is a bucket list of you're going to live. And when you get out here and you're really living, what are you going to do? What are the things that you miss the most? Now, mind you, I had been in and out of the hospital, mostly in the hospital for about 6 months. I said, okay, I know what I want to do. I want to take my kids to Disney. I want to take them to see the ocean. That was my first one. My second one was, I'm a Jeep girl. I have a Jeep Wrangler. I love, love, love driving around with the top off. So I said, I'm going to drive my Jeep Wrangler with the top off again. I just love that. The third thing I was going to do was be healthy and strong enough to come back to Bern and take a camp. And so I was able to complete all 3 of those last year. So since then, you know, I come to camp. I also still do my treadmill work at home. That motto of get up and move, that's still my motto to this day. And that's why I feel like I'm here. I have that positive mindset. I make myself get up and move. And, you know, it's working for me.
Yeah. It's, must feel good to put the top down in that Jeep with the girls and then, yeah.
Oh yeah. They love it. They love it.
Yeah. Well, you are so inspirational.
Thank you.
So inspirational, Tiff. When you can get hit with something like that out of left field, essentially, like, you know, the year before everything's all good. Then you come and you run into this and it's like, okay, it's still all good, but it's some bumps in the road that I'm going to experience here. And you just like put your seatbelt on, you strapped it, you were ready for the ride, and it's not going to stop. You're going to continue to keep fighting. And you're going to continue to keep growing in your positivity and keep growing in your faith and keep growing in your physical health and set more goals. Do you have anything else on the bucket list that you wrote since then? Have you kept that idea going? Is there 3 more things that you want to get out there and do?
So when I went back to the hospital and I met with the chaplain, Bruce, I said, I did my bucket list. And he said, well, that's great. So what's your next one? And I said, well, I didn't know there was going to be a next one. You want another one? He said, just keep it going. You know, it doesn't have to be a whole list of things, but keep it going. Like, I've always wanted to do this. So that's going to be my next goal. One of those things that I've always wanted to do was I wanted to hike the Grand Canyon.
Oh, cool.
I've said that for years. There is a Native American reservation down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It's very, very remote. It's the last place in the U.S. where they still get their mail by pack mule.
Okay. So oh, wow.
I said, I've always wanted to do that hike. It's tough. And you're backpacking, you're carrying in all your own gear, you know, a 50-pound pack on your back all the way down, all the way back up. And we just did that. We did that in April. And we hiked, I think, 75 miles.
Dang.
And I carried a 40-pound pack on my back.
Wow.
And, you know, so I'm out here. I'm just living it and loving it. I'm not sure what the next bucket list will be, the next bucket list item, but I'm sure it's going to be something awesome.
That's a cool one right there, going to the Grand Canyon to a Native American reserve down. Did you guys hike down into the canyon? Yeah. So we had to hike down into the canyon, which really wasn't that hard because we were so excited. We had the adrenaline. And, I also, by the way, I did not tell my oncologist I was doing that. He knows I have this bucket list, but if I said, hey, I'm going to go hike the Grand Canyon, he might be like, well, that's a hard stop, Tiffany. Well, you might as well just let him tell you that because you didn't listen to him the other times you told you just stop moving.
So I went and did it and I had so much fun. The hike out, now that was a different story.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it was rough. I shed some tears on that, but the memories were made and I want to go back. I do want to go back. It was amazing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay. So what else have we talked about? I feel like we've talked about a lot of it. Anything else on your mind that you want? I know that you have some words that you really wanted to say to Burn Nation, some things that you wrote down.
Yeah.
I believe there are some verses from the Bible.
Yeah. So if I leave them with anything, I did want to leave with a few verses.
I think that would be amazing.
Okay. I wrote them down because I didn't want to, being scripture, I didn't want to mess it up. So the first one is James 4:14. It says, "You do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then it vanishes away." And this just reminds me that life is so short. The Bible refers to it like a vapor. So you can't waste any time. It's so short. You got to make the most of that time that you have. The second verse is Matthew 6:34. It says, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." This tells me that you're not going to help yourself by worrying, stressing out, focusing on the negative. You have to focus on the positive, and you have to keep your mind right. You have to keep your mind on the positive things and just keep moving. You know what I mean? Just keep moving. Get up and move. Get up and move.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's embody those two verses you just read embody your journey, don't they?
They do, yeah.
They do. So when's your next camp? We going Monday or
Right,
what?
yeah.
I'll be here all week in Battle Creek with you.
We had a really fun camp this past Saturday, actually. It was National Best Friends Day.
Oh, cool.
And so there's 2 other Tiffany's at our location. So we're on the phone with each other, like, what camp are you going to? And the Tiffany's came together as Team Tiffany.
Oh, really? Team Tiffany?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about how to get some work, put the work in this week while we're here on for our kids' summer camp.
Leg day is my favorite day. Just putting that out there. That's my favorite day.
It's your favorite day?
Yes.
All right. Well, Tiffany, this has been incredible. Thank you for being vulnerable and telling us the ups and downs of your journey. I'm so glad you're continuing to get those hugs.
Thank you.
From those kids every day. And I think what you've done today is help bring a perspective for Burn Nation to life today.
Yes.
And you're beautiful inside and out.
Thank you.
And we're going to continue to be right here with you every camp and
Awesome.
continue to move forward, and we'll keep fighting the good fight.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you for letting me share my story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys would like to read Tiffany's story, chapter 7 in the Burn book, chapter 7. Yeah.
Yep. Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. It's right here. It is available right now, you guys. So you can get it on Amazon or in the gym, Target, Walmart, anywhere that your bookstore has books. We're so excited, Tiffany. Thank you for being a part of this journey and putting your story on paper. Although I will say that we were able to go much, much deeper into it today on the podcast, not being refined by a couple pages, but please, guys, support the Burn Boot Camp book, the 5-step strategy to inner and outer strength, and really read and reread Tiff's part in there, because when we wrote it, we meaning the team that wrote it at HQ, I led it along with Ansley, who is our copywriter, who really helped with the book, and our contributor, Maggie. We all three, every time we had to edit your story, Tiffany, we all three had to talk about it afterwards. It is that powerful. We had to talk about it. Maggie herself was going through cancer. She was diagnosed during the middle of our book. And she had told me several times that your story in the book, as she was writing it, would bring her to tears, and it would be the thing that would make her push through her writing. And I thought I'd save that to the end to tell you, because it's a very, very powerful thing. And God bless her. She is now in remission, continuing to fight. And Maggie is a big part of this book as well. And I know that she would appreciate me telling you that, because you were her inspiration to fight during the last year and a half as we wrote the publication.
It means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, you guys. That's it for today. We'll see you later. 2 claps on 2, 1, 2.